So thank you all for being here. We've got it looks like there's over 60 people in here right now. So what a great turnout for a virtual event. Thank you all so much for being here. I am hoping that this means a lot of people are really excited about the possibilities for the area north of 128. My name's Alexis Smith. I should have started off by introducing myself. I am a senior planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is the region's greater, the regional planning agency for the greater Boston region. And we are here at the town's request to serve as the consultants for this project. We're joined tonight by Greg Federspiel, who's the town administrator. Thank you for being here, Greg. By Bill Rayalt and Elaine Vanya from the State Department of Housing and Community Development. By Sue Brown, who's the town planner in Manchester, and by my colleague at MAPC, Yolando Spinola. And so before we start getting into the nitty gritty, I'm going to hand it over to Gary for an introduction.
No, thanks, Alexis. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And although I can't see you, I choose to imagine lots of friendly, smiling faces. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gary Russell. I'm a member of the Planning Board, and as such, I'm the Planning Board representative for the 40R working group. That working group also includes representatives from the Select Board, Finance Committee, Affordable Housing Trust, and the Conservation Commission. Some of you may know me from being co-chair of the Master Plan Committee that produced the Master Plan. And I have to say, I'm really excited about getting this far because I believe it was back in 2014 that we started talking about the Master Plan, and the LCD was quite a topic about that process, and it's been a topic in the town for, I would say, decades. You know, what are we going to do with this? So really exciting that we're getting to a point to put something together that feels real. So tonight I'm here to just thank you, welcome you, and I think that what we should clarify is that 40R Smart Growth Overlay District is a mouthful. So we're not going to repeat that every time, but we'd like to think of this as a new neighborhood in the limited commercial district, and you'll understand more what we mean by that as the evening goes on. The forum tonight is sort of a starting point for all of you out there to begin to consider the idea of a new neighborhood in the LCD, what that means and what it might look like. And again, to clarify, the 40R Smart Growth Overlay District can be confused with another project in town that's coming up, which is the 40B development project. So 40 this, 40 that. These are different projects. So tonight we're focusing on 40R Smart Growth, the new neighborhood in the limited commercial district. We probably won't get to any questions about the 40B, except for some questions about how the two projects might interact, because there probably will be a relationship. So we'll go through this forum. At the end, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. And then we'll also have a survey that you can participate in. And if you haven't seen it already, there will be a project website up that will keep all of this information up front for the public and will be updated as we go along. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Alexis, and thank you for participating.
Oh, great, thanks. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. First of all, just getting some details out of the way. This meeting is being recorded. You should have gotten a pop-up notice about that when you joined the meeting. If you're not comfortable with that, then please feel free to just stay on and kind of hang out in the background, and just don't have to you participate vocally, but you can still message us on the chat, and all of that. And this recording will be posted publicly on the website after we're through tonight. So just a heads up. And just also a general technical point. If at any point you have any issues or aren't sure, how to raise your hand or any of that stuff, please just feel free to type a note in the chat box, either to all of us or to Yolando. He's going to be monitoring that, and and one of us can come and help you figure out how to access the technology. So with that, let's get going. Just looking at what we've got in store for tonight, we're already through the introductions. Again, welcome to everyone, and thanks for being here. I am going to give a presentation that gives an overview of the area, kind of how we got to where we are, and then also just gets into a little bit of detail about what a 40R smart growth district is, which again is the zoning that the town is considering. The bulk of the meeting is going to be for your questions, and then following that, we are going to hand you over to a survey that will be open all week, or for you to complete tonight, that will really start to get into what the look and feel of this new neighborhood could look like, and what your vision for the area is. So a lot of good stuff. This is the really fun part, is thinking about what's possible. So with that, I'll just get right into it. Again, our goals for tonight are for us to provide you with information about the area, and that includes answering your questions. And then primarily through the survey, we'll be asking for your input on your priorities, as far as the look and feel. So I am really looking forward to some of the survey results and seeing what y'all have to say. But in the meanwhile, how we got here? Why is the town considering this? Oh, I didn't mention, we're going to be doing some live polling throughout the evening, because nobody wants to listen to me talk for 20 minutes straight. So in another moment, you should get a live poll window popping up in your Zoom window. For those of you who are calling in, it looks like very few folks are calling in. For those of you who are calling in, you unfortunately will not be able to participate in the poll, but I will read it out loud so that you can at least hear what we're saying. So this first one is just getting to the how we got here. It's I'm wondering how familiar folks are with the master plan and its goals. I know some people in the room were intimately part of the process, and some people in the room were familiar with it. Yeah, oh, there it is. It should have popped up now. So just click on whatever your response is, and then in a minute, we'll be able to let you know what the total is. It looks, we're getting a lot of familiars. It looks like about half the people in the room are familiar with it. Another 20% participated in the master plan process, and then another 30% have either heard of it but aren't really sure what's in it, or have never heard of it. So great, thanks for that. So for those of you who have not heard of it, or who aren't really sure what's involved, I highly encourage you to take a look at it. As Gary mentioned, I was not involved in that process, but it was a long process, and it's a really thoughtful document that kind of outlines where the town wants to go. And so I'll give you a brief overview of how that fits in. And you all can just, if the poll box is still up, you can just feel free to close that out so you can see the screen. The master plan has 2 priority recommendations, which I really love. Some plans have like 20 recommendations, and this plan does have a lot of recommendations, but the town identified 2 really critically important pieces that it wants to work towards. The first is increasing revenue, specifically through plan development within the limited commercial district. So that, in terms of, the rationale behind that was, let me click this here, was that, the town has expenses, has to maintain its infrastructure, and most of its revenue comes from residential property taxes. And so the thought behind this was, where can we leverage our resources to rely a little bit less on those residential property taxes? And, a prime identified area for that was through some commercial development within the limited commercial district. Again, there's an emphasis on carefully planned development, about development that fits in with Manchester's character and its goals. So that was the first priority in the master plan. The second one is to support a diversity of housing options through town, or throughout town, excuse me. So this one is a priority because, you know, folks identified that, you know, you don't need me to tell you that housing prices are getting more expensive. That's not unique to Manchester. That's not unique to Massachusetts, but it's, you know, it's pretty expensive to live here. You know, the master plan folks did some great data work. They identified that the vast majority of homes in Manchester are assessed at more than $500,000. They also noted that, you know, household sizes are shrinking. You know, the 61% of all households in Manchester are only 1 or 2 people, and yet less than a quarter of the houses in Manchester have less than 6 rooms. So there's a big mismatch between who lives in town and the housing that's available in town. There's also a lot of thought given to, you know, folks are aging, also not unique to Manchester, but, you know, as folks are aging, you know, there's recognition that people want to be able to stay in the community that they've lived in for decades while not necessarily maintaining a large house or lawn. And so the plan identified needs for a greater variety of housing. The town has already done a really great job laying the groundwork for this. There was an assessment team to look at the possibility of this smart growth zoning. Last fall, the planning board hosted a community meeting on the subject, which Bill was kind enough to present at from the state. And the most recent step is that the town requested technical assistance from MAPC, my agency, which is why I'm here tonight. So just a quick overview of the area. The area we're talking about is, on the map that on your screen, all the area in light purple is the limited commercial district. The area that we're thinking about, well, you know, is specifically, it's, you know, the area north of 128 and on either side of School Street. So that those parcels circled in the magenta circle on the screen. Zooming in on that a little bit, you know, for those of you who can't, or, you know, who drive down School Street or who, you know, get off the highway interchange, I'm sure it's many of you. Some of the things that are in the area currently are, you probably pass by the farm stand on School Street. There's a lot of conservation land and trails surrounding the district that we're thinking of. I do want to say that nothing that's getting proposed will involve any sort of development in the conservation land. That will stay as conservation land. But it's important to think about because, you know, Manchester values its open space, and there might be really cool, important ways to tie a new neighborhood into this trail network. The other things that are in the area are there's a couple of medical offices and buildings, and of course the Manchester Athletic Club. And so I am curious to hear from you all how often you visit this area, how often you find yourself in the area. And there's going to be another live poll coming up in a second. And again, for those on the phone, it's, you know, the options are, you know, whether you go once a week, once a month, not usually. We're getting, let's see, there's a little less than half of you are there. Looking more like 40% are there more than once a week. About a quarter are there once a week. Another quarter are there a few times a month. And about 20% of you are there a few times a year or don't usually go. So this is great. This means that a lot of the people in the room have a pretty intimate knowledge of the area that we're talking about. And so now the follow-up question, oh, let me see. I think I shared the results there for you to see. A follow-up question is why you go to the area. For those on the phone, we're putting another poll up. There's, as I mentioned, we've got the Manchester Athletic Club, the Utopia Farm Stand, doctors and medical appointments, some of the wellness offices there. Walking or biking in the area, or just driving through the area. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. There's quite a few choices here. Let's see. It looks like the breakaway answers are probably close to 70% of you all go there to visit Utopia Farm Stand. Another 70% just drive through on School Street. About 60% use the trails nearby. So we've got some outdoor lovers here. And the next ones after that are about 35% of you use the Manchester Athletic Club. After that, it's pretty small. If you, maybe 22% visit doctor's appointments there. So a good variety of uses there. All right. Let me see. So the current zoning, well, first of all, let me back up. Zoning is a set of town regulations that say what sort of uses can happen on a particular parcel. You know, whether or not you can build housing or build offices, that's all determined by the zoning. It also determines how big those buildings can be, the size and scale of them. So right now, the limited commercial district is the name of that zoning district. And right now, the only things you can do in that area are business and professional offices, which is not surprising because there are a few there. Recreational facilities, again, not surprising because the athletic club is there. Other allowed uses are municipal uses and solar arrays. But that's pretty much it. Pretty limited opportunity. So one of the things that we'll be asking you to think about later tonight is what else, is possible. So kind of going back to the big picture, like why here? Why this area? When we were in a working group meeting a couple weeks ago, and somebody asked that, and and folks kind of felt that this area represents the biggest possibility in town. It's the biggest impact area. And this is the place this is a place where the town can really proactively plan, so that that things that happen are very consistent with what the town wants to see happen. Because it's such a large area. I mean, it's a big area. It's probably 150 acres. We don't know the exact boundaries yet, but we'll be determining that soon. It represents the opportunity to create a real, a new neighborhood in a really constructive and holistic way, which is very exciting. So again, the biggest bang for our buck here. Another kind of getting you to continue thinking about what the opportunities are there. Now we'll do another live poll asking you, what businesses or services do you travel outside of Manchester for? For those on the phone, we're thinking about if you take your kids someplace, do you go shopping? Do you go out to eat? Entertainment is on here. Let's just say restaurants and entertainment in the pre-COVID times for the sake of the poll. Again, we're just kind of looking to get you to start thinking about, what do you travel outside of town for that maybe we could capture for in-town use? So far, it looks like the breakaway use is shopping. This is very fun seeing all the answers come in as you all answer. More than half of you leave town to go shopping, which I appreciate covers a wide variety of different types of shopping. It looks like 15% of you leave for restaurants and for entertainment. About 10% leave for healthcare. So, a pretty good mix. Just as we're moving forward, keep this in the back of your mind and just be mulling over things that that aren't necessarily available in town, but that you might like to be. So that's the sort of thing that we'll be thinking about for this district. So, moving on. Let's talk for a little bit about smart growth zoning. As Gary mentioned, smart growth zoning, also known as Chapter 40R zoning, is a state program that the town is considering. And so before we get too deep into what that is, I'm just curious to get a read from the room. Have you heard of 40R smart growth overlay zoning? We'll have another poll here. This will help me understand how wonky I should get in the explanation. It looks like over half of folks have heard of it or familiar with it. Around 25% of people in the room have heard of it because they attended the planning board's discussion last year. So cheers to the planning board and to Bill for that. Some of you have read about it in the master plan. The majority of folks, 40%, are familiar with it just from general knowledge, and about 30% have not heard of it, or have heard of it but don't really know what it is. So I'm going to go through it. You do not want me talking for the next hour, so we're going to give a pretty high-level overview, but there will be more materials on this available on the project website, which we'll post a link to at the end of this meeting. So I encourage you to think about what questions you might have. That's why we're here tonight, about 40R. And so we'll answer whatever we can and share information on the website. So thanks again for everyone responding. Keeping it a little interactive, so in the midst of a long presentation. So Chapter 40R, or the Smart Growth Zoning Overlay District, encourages communities to adopt compact mixed income zoning districts in select locations where development at certain densities can occur either as right or through a limited plan review process. So there was a lot in there, and we're going to kind of unpack that, that definition piece by piece. So first of all, what makes an area smart growth? There's a lot of different definitions out there, but in terms of the state's program, there's 3 different things that can qualify. The first is being near public transit. So, for example, a commuter rail station, a train station, that would enable people to travel around without a car. Because we're looking at the limited commercial district north of 128 and not downtown, that this area doesn't qualify for that. The second thing that is considered smart growth is if you're in what's called, the wonky term is in an area of concentrated development, which essentially means like a city or a town center, a place where you can get amenities, where you can walk to go places. Again, because we're not thinking about downtown, the LCD area wouldn't qualify. And LCD is short for limited commercial district. I'll probably start throwing that acronym in. But when I say LCD, I just mean that area that was circled earlier. The third category for what's a suitable area is, it's kind of broad, just any other suitable area. And in this case, this is where the LCD area falls. And that's primarily because it is just such a high opportunity area, as like we talked about before, the reason why the town is considering doing things there in the first place. The second piece of what makes a smart growth district is by right density, or density with site plan review. A 40R district is required to be majority residential, and part of that is minimum densities, and that's part of what makes it smart growth. That's small. It's a smaller, more compact footprint that allows preservation of open space elsewhere. It allows for more walkable, vibrant communities, and it generally means smaller, different housing options, which starts to get at that master plan goal from before. And within these densities, there's various different categories. There's still single family housing, townhouses, and apartments, all at different requirements. Another component is affordability. This is where we really start to get into the, checking off those master plan goals. 20% of all housing in the district must be affordable. And the definition of affordable for this is, it means it has to be a household earning 80% of the area median income must be able to afford the rent. So that's not actually very deeply affordable, but when you look at what the rent limits are, those are well below Manchester market, and so it's kind of an exciting opportunity to provide some housing in an income tier that's pretty rare in town. The next piece of what you often find in a 40R district is design standards. Because development is happening by right, that the towns often decide to implement pretty robust design standards that say, to make sure that development is in keeping with what the town wants to see. This ranges from, building setbacks and proportions and scale to where the parking goes, what sort of treatment and proportions you're doing on your entrances. It has to do with how the development interacts with adjacent properties, what sort of landscaping there is, open space requirements. It's a lot of really fun things to think about. And I hope all of you will take the survey, because this is the sort of thing that we're going to be asking you about in this survey. What do you want this district to feel like? What's the experience when you go there? It's really fun to think about, and I'm looking forward to seeing all your responses to that. The next piece of what the Smart Growth District in Massachusetts means is incentives. The state provides an incentive payment based on the number of additional housing units that could be created under the zoning. It ranges from $10,000 to $600,000. My guess is if Manchester adopts a smart growth zoning, it will be somewhere in the middle of that. But it's a pretty nice sweetener. In addition to that, for every unit that actually gets built, the state will give the town an additional $3,000 for every housing unit. And beyond that, there's the opportunity if school costs are incurred because of children that move to the district, there's the opportunity for reimbursement there as well. So that's where we start getting, that along with the mixed use commercial development is where we pull in the goal of, find fiscal responsibility from the master plan. The process for a smart growth district is very iterative. It involves a lot of back and forth with DHCD, a lot of checking in with the public. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I will say, and this will be posted online, but I mostly just want to highlight that this is a zoning change, and so it needs to be adopted by a 2/3 majority at town meeting. So this is it's a state program, but it requires local approval. I'm just going to run through some examples really quickly to give you an idea of what's possible. This is an example of some smaller townhouse style buildings. There, I mentioned rents prices before, but these are ownership units, which is nice. We've got, this is an example of a mixed use, so housing over commercial. Here's another, another district. This one is this was in that highly suitable location category that the LCD would be in. I wanted to highlight this one because the site plan shows a couple of different kinds of housing, which is interesting, and also it incorporates open space and trails, which I know that the town is interested in. Here's another example of a mixed use project with a couple of different districts. One you might be familiar with, Arbor Point at Linfield is another smart growth 40R development. So just in summary, this is being considered because it meets those two key town goals of encouraging a greater variety of smaller housing types and has a pretty robust affordability component, and also includes the opportunity for commercial use and incentive payments as throwing that into the deal as well. So what's next? Where do we go from here? This is the same slides before, only we've got some dates on it. We've got 3 phases coming up. Right now, we're just doing some initial visioning. In the next 2 months, we will take what we hear from you, both tonight, through the survey, through some focus groups, and we will develop a concept plan, which we will then vet with DHCD and seek public input for. Based on that, we'll start developing a zoning district, which again will go back for public input. And then if the process continues, we're looking at adoption at Springtown meeting. And again, there'll be, so opportunities for public input after some, as decisions are being made, and then also there'll be regular updates on the project website, which we'll post afterwards. So as we're moving on, some things to think about. I've kind of queued this up already, but in terms of land use, what does Manchester need more of? What isn't in town that you would like to see in town? In terms of the look and feel, like how, what are people going there for? What amenities would you like to see in place? Is it a vibrant, exciting, destination? Is it a fun, little quiet neighborhood with open space nooks? It's kind of the sky's the limit here. And then the last piece is connectivity. We want to make sure that people are getting around within the district in a sustainable way, and also that it feels connected to the rest of town. And so these are some of the things that we're going to be looking to you all for ideas for. And again, we're really looking forward to your responses in the survey. So kind of to get your juices going a little bit, we're, for those on the phone, we're queuing up another poll now, just asking what makes a good neighborhood. It could be anything. It could be that it's got a unique character. It's got, really attractive architecture. It's got just services that you need, and activities that you like to participate in. It could be that it's got a variety of different housing, that's pleasant to walk around in. Got public spaces that are enjoyable to gather in. All sorts of different things. Easy to get there. That's a key one. I'm just going to give folks a couple of minutes to answer. There's a nice diversity of answers here, which is great. It looks like so far the winner is 70% responded with the walkable area as being one of their top three. Sense of community is, around 45% of people said that was one of their top priorities. Inviting public spaces is high up there. Distinct character. So again, the survey will be asking about each of these items in more detail. And so we'll be looking forward to getting into that. Thanks to everyone who voted there. All right, so let me close this out here. So now we're going to move on to question and answer time. Since we're not in person, there's a few more steps to go through here. To ask a question, there's a little hand icon that you can just click on that, and that will let us know that you're raising your hand. If you're calling in on the phone, you can click *9 and that will do the same thing. You can also type your question into the chat box, and we'll see it. It looks like a couple of people are already starting to raise their hands, so we'll just know that we see your hand, and we will call on you in the order it's that we see your hand raised. And before I turn things, Yolando's going to let you know who's up next, and he will unmute you. And before I hand it over to the questions, I would just ask that folks keep things brief. There's a lot of people in the meeting tonight, and we're up to over 72 people right now, or 72, excuse me, people right now. And I want to make sure everyone has a chance to participate. So if I will cut you off if you speak for a bit of time, but please understand that is me wanting to give everyone a chance to talk, and it is not a lack of interest in what you have to say. And I will, please, fill the survey out, shoot me an email, and let me know. We do want to hear, but we also just want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk. So with that, I am going to ask Yolando to queue up the questions.
So it looks like we have a question from Nick. I'm going to unmute him. You should be able to speak to the panelist.
Hi. I'm curious about alternative scenarios for these areas. I'm getting the sense that there's a little bit of a selling going on regarding the smart development proposal, and I'm wondering whether you can spell out some of the things that could happen in these areas without a master plan in place.
I think, folks from the town, feel free to chime in. I mean, I think if the town does nothing, then well, the 40B aside, if the town does nothing, I don't know that much would change, but, Greg or Gary or Sue, please feel free to chime in.
Sure, so do nothing is keep what we have, keep the LCD as it currently stands. I think we've seen very little development activity over the years, given the restrictions of the LCD. That's partly by design, I believe. And that is a rational choice perhaps going forward. If people decide that they really want to keep it the way it is, then that would be a logical outcome, is preserving the area as it is today. Some consequences of that, we have to look at our ability to tax ourselves and to pay for the services and infrastructure needs that we have. But that's certainly an alternative. There are multiple different versions that could be chosen as well under the 40R. I think part of the survey will try to get at the type of development that people might be interested in, if they are interested in allowing an expanded options for development. So there are multiple alternatives under 40R as well. So I think that's the purpose of holding this session, is to try to get some feedback as to what those alternatives might best be.
Looks like we have another question here from Leonard. I'm gonna unmute you and allow you to talk. Leonard, you are now able to talk.
Okay, my question is that the area where they're discussing building this new housing project is above Cedar Swamp, which drains into one of the major streams, Sawmill Brook, in Manchester, and Sawmill Brook feeds our drinking water well. And how do we ensure that this development is not going to drain harmful chemicals into our drinking water, particularly if they have parking lots and cars that are leaking oil and gasoline and perhaps sewer leaks and that sort of thing? How do we protect our drinking water?
I can take a start at that one. I think one of the things that we can include, I mean, there's a base level of building, building code to comply with. I think beyond that, one of the things that that the town can consider is incorporating pretty robust low impact development measures into the design guidelines, and could pay attention to really looking at stormwater runoff and ensuring that it's mitigated on site. A few folks have flagged the wetlands in the area, and we're definitely hearing that that's a priority of folks in town, understandably.
It looks like we have some questions in the Q&A box too to be answered, and we can answer those out loud. One question is if folks can just announce themselves as they are speaking, making a statement or asking a question. So I'm going to say that one's answered. So that's a request. And then we have
it looks like one is about how will residents in any potential future residents access the commuter rail. That's one of the things that that we'll need to consider, because this is one of those other suitable locations. One of the things that the state is going to be asking is how we're looking at how this area does connect to the downtown. The question asker mentioned something about shuttle buses, which is certainly something that we will look at. But it's unfortunately, a lot of the answers are going to be to be determined, since we're at the very beginning of this. But I think that's an important thing that we'll need to pay attention to. Do folks from the town or state have anything to add to that?
A quick comment. So we do have the CATA, which is the Cape Ann Transit Authority, and there's an ability for us to have CATA provide service to the town. It would actually be a shift of the dollars that we're currently giving to the MBTA, and it's shifted to CATA. They have proposed in recent years doing a shuttle loop through town. It hasn't gotten off the ground, but it is a possibility. And if there's a higher need up in this, like that this area could provide, then that is something that would be a possibility.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would just add, Bill Rails here from DHCD. I assume the question is just sort of how would that, you know, for the purposes of benefiting the new residents and you know, this would not, you know, it's not the transit category, so it wouldn't be a strict requirement per se. It's more of, you know, when we're evaluating the eligibility of an other highly suitable location, we're sort of looking at the menu or the landscape of sort of smart growth characteristics, if you will. So, you know, that could be something that we would encourage for sure. And as well as, you know, good pedestrian connectivity, but it doesn't have to be within the half mile of a transit, or that there's necessarily, you know, and I may be, I apologize if I'm, you know, it's been a while since I looked at the details of this district, and I may be, hopefully I'm not contradicting anything I've said previously, but just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, this is Elaine Vining with the state that 3 eligible locations, you only need to meet one of them. So it's near transit, or, you know, town center, or village center, or you're in this other category, which this district's in.
Thanks.
Alexis, if I may.
Yeah.
To add on to this, so there's another question about how this development might impact the current downtown and keep the current downtown vibrant. So obviously, having a strong transit or transportation, whether it be a shuttle or some other option to keep these two places connected, is really important. And so it's not just about transit, and not just about getting to the T, but making sure that we don't let our downtown wither away at the expense of a new district. And that's also part of why we were starting to ask about what sorts of uses do we not see in town that we might want to see up in the new neighborhood, because we don't really want to take away what we already have. We want to complement the town and add a better mix of what we're missing.
Great, thanks. Let's see. It looks like there's another question in the chat about most of the area being rock or marsh. That is absolutely true. Though, you know, the wetland, the restrictions on development in wetlands would still apply. So marshland, you know, there would not be any building in the wetlands. In terms of the rock, the second piece of that question was about if there would be a need for blasting. I honestly don't know. A lot of that will be determined by, you know, whatever the plans are of folks who eventually come in under this, you know, potential zoning. It's certainly a possibility, but you know, that's something that we can think more about. Let's see, Yolanda, are there any folks raising their hand in or should we keep going with the chat questions?
You can keep going with the chat questions. There are no hands up at the moment.
There's a question about, and this one, Bill, I'm going to pass this one to you. Is the funding from the state to support schools in addition to any per pupil funding we currently receive? And how long does this additional funding last for?
The funding lasts, you know, there's no sunset on that. It's an annual thing that the municipality would apply for each year. And yes, it is money in addition to what money the town already receives. And it's for, you know, each pupil that happens to be living in the development, and to the extent there's a formula that's applied that results in a net increase in school costs based on a portion of the real estate and excise taxes that the development brings in.
Great, thanks.
Alexis, sorry, this is Gary again. May I just interrupt for a moment?
Please. Oh, Alex.
So we do have a lot of folks participating, and it's going to be a little difficult to answer every question in detail because many of these questions alone are their own forum topic. But I do want to point out, so we have questions appearing in the chat. We also have some questions that are popping up in the Q&A box.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that some people are either not getting their questions answered, and there's also a couple of requests for wanting to understand or be able to see the questions themselves, so the audience can actually read the questions and see who's asking them. I don't know if that's possible, but we have a few people wanting to understand who's asking and be able to read the question too.
Oh, great. Thank you for flagging that.
Sure.
Yolanda, I don't know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the questions, once they are answered in the Q&A, we can click answer live, and then the participants can see the question. So the questions can only be seen after they are answered. We just have to click answer live. So whoever does answer that, that's what you would need to do. We can also just move all the questions to answered live so other folks can see what the questions are, but it would just not allow us to track.
Okay, thank you. I'll also just note that for anyone participating online, if you open your chat box, you should be able to see everyone's chats come up in a sidebar. So you should be able to see all the questions that are being answered through, or being asked, I should say, through the chat box on a sidebar to the right of your screen.
All right.
So those questions in the chat box, actually, we're the only ones who can see it. They cannot see those questions. It's only the panelists.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's probably
that might be some of the
creating some confusion, because there seems to be a lot more participants asking questions through the chat than through the Q&A.
Okay. Well, I apologize for the confusion there. I'm wondering if we can just make the chat part of the record here, and share people's questions. So even though it's not an ideal solution because you all won't be able to see it live right now, but we could. Oh, sorry.
I have enabled it, so now people are able to see both the chat, so they're able to see the chats that the public is submitting.
Okay.
And then we have one hand here from Nick, who's asking a question out loud.
Hi, I'm sorry if I'm asking questions that should have obvious answers, but it appears that tax mitigation, property tax mitigation, is the chief motivation for this smart development consideration. I'm wondering if you could articulate a few other primary goals of smart development in this area, beyond simply at least controlling our property taxes or limited growth in our property taxes.
I mean, I think a huge second goal would be the additional housing options that are kind of beyond single family housing, which is a lot of what exists in town today. I think some other goals are just creating a walkable neighborhood where people can get around in sustainable ways. I think others feel free to chime in, Gary or Greg or Sue, who've been part of this process for a while.
So I think another opportunity here is to be more deliberate about what does happen to this area. Once we determine the vision, then we can be more specific in guiding whatever takes place towards that vision. So right now, we don't really have a vision for the area. We have the LCD, the current zoning, and we're going to get what we get without perhaps being as mindful and deliberative as we could be. So again, once we have some sense of what the majority of people feel is the right vision, then we can better match the zoning to ensure that that vision occurs. So I don't think we have that right now with our current zoning, because it'll sort of fritter away the way it's been. And it could be a sort of a disjunctive development over the years. So I think this gives us an opportunity to be more creative, more deliberative, and identify that true vision and make sure our regulations allow us to achieve that vision.
Great, thanks.
Looks like we have a hand here from Laura.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Laura Tenney from Pine Street. I want to thank you all for the presentation, and I start by saying I'm strongly in favor of a smart growth approach to town for all the reasons you've talked about, including environmental protection and walkable neighborhoods and diversity and equity and income and other measures. I wanted to ask about how, when you think about protection of the open spaces, how it could be built into the zoning and planning to think about key environmental goals such as watershed protection. Someone brought that up already, maintaining tree canopy cover, connection to local trails. Someone said low impact development. If you could speak a little bit more about that, that would be great to increase resiliency and environmental stewardship. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the question. I can start by saying that is, something that, that can be incorporated into the design standards. If that is a priority of the town, then, which I'm hearing that it is, we can, take a real hard look at how to, make sure that the design standards are really robust in terms of what materials are being used, permeability, that sort of thing. There will also be a site plan that will look at, you'd mentioned talking about open spaces and how the area interacts with the trails and the surrounding conservation land. The site plan, that site plan will be something that we'll consider that, which again we'll be sharing with folks in another month or two to kind of do a gut check and make sure that we got it right. And does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add a quick note. So there are a lot of concerns, not only about conservation, but many of these other issues that have come up that I just want to point out that one of the great things about this process is that the town has an opportunity to create specifically what kind of guidelines and restrictions we want and what is really important. So if we're concerned about low impact development, we can make those pretty strict, and we have the ability to say no, not good enough. So that's a great opportunity here. When you're working through a more typical zoning process, you're looking for sort of a one size fits all, see what you get kind of thing. And then you rely on other parts of regulations to help you with some of the specifics. But in this case, as we go through creating the guidelines about what we want to see and how we want to see it done, we can get very detailed about what that means. And so certainly we've known for a long time that conservation, watershed issues are high priorities. And we also want to note that in this area, there's also some development that's already happened, and I would say it's underdevelopment. So, there's some warehouses, there's been some quarrying that's happened back there. So there's some underused opportunities. And so we could also think about focusing some of our energy on what we would call the area of already disturbed. I just want to make it clear that this is not an attempt to, make this sprawling development and overcome the conservation area, but really to enhance what's there and look for an opportunity that we can do something that doesn't have to make an impact on the watershed. We've known that this is through the master plan process. We've talked about this for a long time. It's very important. So we hear you.
Let's see. It looks, Yolanda, are there questions in the Q&A box?
Yes, there are many questions there that just need to be answered also out loud that folks haven't, that we just haven't been able to answer yet. I moved them over to answered out loud just so that folks can see them. But we probably would just need to answer those or indicate if there's going to be, if they will be answered at a later point or if we can't answer them today. Do you want me just to go through them?
Let's do a couple more, yeah. And as folks have to step off, I totally appreciate that. I think what we can do is, I don't know that we're going to get to all of them tonight, but what we don't get to, or the ones we do or don't get to, we can kind of write up brief responses to those and post those online so that folks can at least see a first take at the answers. Does that sound good to everyone? Yeah. All right. In the meanwhile, we can do a couple more at least. What have we got in the Q&A box?
Okay. Looks like Sandy Rogers asked, if the town approves the zoning change, will the town be able to by vote approve each major development is that up to the town or is that up to the town officials? That's an issue. So question / statement.
Yeah. So the answer is the town, when residents and members of town meeting approve, if the zoning is approved at town meeting, that is the point at which residents weigh in. And the idea behind this zoning is that as Gary was saying, the idea is to craft design guidelines and kind of really tight, Manchester specific goals and guidelines for this that get well beyond what you'd see in typical zoning. Like you can get into the things like the low impact design or development principles and all of that. The idea is that you provide a really specific framework for what the town wants to see, and then development that meets that criteria moves forward with site plan reviews, so staff review. So the short answer is that when developments come in, the town residents will have already weighed in on whether or not they kind of like the idea at town meeting when the zoning is under consideration, and then the development proposal is really just executing what the town has said it wants. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was great. I mean, well, I will, I guess, just say that, yeah, the zoning would designate a plan approval authority of some type, which could be, in many towns, it's the planning board. It could also be a hybrid board created just for the 40R zoning, involving representatives from various boards. So, and yeah, they would be reviewing the project applications and, applying. I mean, there would still be obviously opportunities for input on the details of the project and how a project is or is not meeting the requirements that are laid out in the zoning and any design standards. But Alexis is exactly right. You're sort of approving the basic uses and densities and framework when you approve the zoning.
Another question is, can we revive the CATA bus transportation so people can get to town without a car?
I think Greg sort of already covered that one with the potential to expand that. I'll read the one from Carolyn. Says, how many new residents would be planned for an expanded housing project, and what level of increase would impact existing infrastructure like schools, fire, police? To answer the first part of that, we don't know how many residents we might be talking about. That will depend on what housing densities we're looking at, which is part of what we're asking for folks input on in the survey that we're going to have. So we'll be looking for your input on that. Whatever the number is, in terms of the school impact, as Bill has already kind of mentioned, if there's a formula for the state the town would be eligible for reimbursement of school costs, depending on a formula. In terms of police and fire, this is actually, Bill, I'm gonna throw this to you. How do typically you'd have some sort of development impact study for a large development project coming in? Would that happen under a development project for 40R, or would that happen with the zoning itself?
Aspects of that can be incorporated into the zoning. Mainly, what we look for in the zoning is some, we want to see it be as objective as it can be in terms of what the expectations are for the developer. To the degree it becomes less objective and less discernible to an applicant, I guess, we might place conditions on the zoning incentive payment. If there's a lack of certainty if some of the requirements seem like they might be so onerous or are so vague that it's not clear whether an applicant would be able to understand them and comply with them, we might condition the payment. But that said, I think in this instance, there's already been some discussion that initial payment, that zoning incentive payment, probably because of the lack of infrastructure, mainly water and sewer and some sidewalks, would be more tied to the issuance of building permits. So sort of on the back end, or at least probably phased to some degree. So I don't know if I answered the question adequately there, but.
Thanks.
And that, so 51% of the new development needs to be housing, 49% can be non-housing. So there is a desire for a mixture, and housing tends to be the most heavily demanding of municipal services, whereas the non-housing development obviously is less demanding. So the values of those and the proportions that we want to think about certainly have impact sort of the town's bottom line in terms of cost and revenues.
And we could provide examples of other bylaws and language that I guess is exemplary of, or samples of project impact study type language that we've accepted.
Great, thanks. Lando, what else from the Q&A box?
So no questions up with hands, but there is a question in the chat. Someone asked who owns the land being looked at for the zoning area.
All right, great. Sue, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Sorry, unmuting. So there are multiple owners. The town owns a few parcels, but many of them are personally owned. The MAC has a large piece of land that is beyond what is already developed. And there are several other, I would say 5 or 6 owners that actually have frontage, so developable land in the MAC.
Great.
Another question is, this might have already been answered, but do you have any example of a 40R development without major components being retail, restaurants that would compete with our downtown and includes use like office space, startup company space, health services, or other uses?
It's a good question. Bill, are there any examples that you're aware of?
The Northampton project might be a good example. That includes some commercial, and obviously Northampton has a downtown, a beloved downtown, and they have some industrial zoning and office and whatnot in their Village Hill district, which is the former state hospital site. If I think of others, I'll chime in, but or I can follow up with those examples.
Great, thanks. So, but just even though there aren't a ton of examples, that doesn't mean that Manchester can't do it.
I have that the owner of the MAC in particular has a high interest in sort of a health and wellness theme for expansion. So not retail and or not large number of retail or restaurants, but really focusing on health services and possibility of a continuing care facility as well for those of us who are getting older.
Right. This will be a really quick one from Allison. Does the building have to conform to existing rules in terms of height, area, etc.? No. This will be new zoning that overrides the current zoning. So no. Part of this will be coming up with new height, area requirements and dimensions.
Alexis, may I interrupt you again?
Yes.
Hi, Gary Russell again. So something that I know has been on folks' minds, and just judging by some of the questions, something we haven't addressed is the idea of boundaries. So I just want to point out that although we shared a map of the limited commercial district is the entire area north of 128, and then we showed this little kind of vague oval about an area of concentration we're looking at. Part of the public process as we go through this will be defining specific boundaries for what this district should be, where it should be. And I believe, I'm going to throw this to Bill, if you don't mind. I believe there's also a possibility, can we have sub-districts within our overlay so that if we have a larger overlay district, can we have some uses concentrated within one part of that district as opposed to another?
Absolutely. The example that was shown from Belmont, I think, is a good example of that. I mean, the total district size there, I think, was 1.5 acres, and they had, I believe, 4 different sub-districts within that 1.5 acres. So I think with the overall public purpose of the statute, there's really no, sort of concern with spot zoning or anything, so you can really be quite detailed in with the sub-districts.
Great, thank you. I think that would go a long way for residents to understand that we can be very careful about what type of development and uses goes exactly where so that it's appropriate. And also, if you don't mind me, Alexis,
please.
I know we're running late, but we've had a lot of folks on the call, and we still have, it looks like, over 50 folks on the call, lots of questions, and I'd like to assure people that somehow, some way, we're going to be able to publish these questions and make sure that they're answered, even if not specifically one by one, at least the issues. We can have some answers, and we'll post those on the project website when it's up. And I'm just going to say, when I say we will do that, I mean, that's probably me and Sue and you, Alexis.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, we're already over. But Yolanda, is there maybe one more question, and then we can
There is a question just about the survey, if we can share.
Oh, excellent segue.
So that's a perfect question.
All right. So next steps tonight, take the survey. We'll put a link in the chat in the moment. And for those of you that registered, I will also send an email to all of you with that link. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. We would like to see as much participation as possible. Again, this is going to be a starting point to help us figure out what what the town wants to see there. So it's, we'll look forward to hearing from you. In October, we'll share what we heard, both in terms of the survey, and even in advance of October, we will post something about, the questions and responses to them. And in the meanwhile, of course, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Sue. My information is on the website, which I'll put in the chat as well. And then also in October, we'll be developing some concepts based on what we hear, and we'll come back to the public in November to share that and get input on. So for the survey, it should take less than 10 minutes. And again, we're just, it'll be really important in determining what folks' goals are. So we are going to put that in the chat post it, and we will send an email out. It'll be on the project website and on the town's website, which you can see. Thank you all for being here and for your thoughts, your thoughtful comments, and we will look forward to hearing more. Sue or Greg, anything else? Or Gary, anything else to close out?
Yeah, I would just, again, say that we will there were so many questions, and very, a lot of thoughtful questions, and I do want to get back to them. We will answer those as quickly as possible and get them posted. So thank you very much for all of the questions and thoughts, and hopefully you'll be able to go to the website or the survey and learn more about it, and some of your questions might be answered by that as well. So,
all right, and before we close out, I'm going to thank you for bearing with me while I get the survey link here. Oh, never mind.
Yeah,
Londra just posted it, so thank you. So you should be able to see it now. Could someone just respond in the chat and let us know that it's visible to y'all? And then oh yes, thank you. All right, great. Thank you all for coming. I will look forward to either discussing this with you on email or at the next time we bring things back to the public.
And someone's asking just for the link for the project website, and we'll also put that in the chat right now.
Yes. The project website is right here. Okay. And I'm also going to give you the town website where there will be links to everything.
Yeah, right on the front page of the town's website, they can access this project website.
All right.
We'll make sure that we keep that update, and that's where they can go to find the answers, to find the information.
Great.
So
and
we'll all be linked. We'll link everything.
Yeah, I will. So I will include all these in an email to everyone who registered, and it'll be on the town website. All right. With that, thank you all, and I am looking forward to continuing the discussion with everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And thanks to the panelists for being here and answering the questions.
Thank you all.